I think we were all here last week. I don't think there's anybody new. So we just as a quick refresher, we went through life as a pilgrimage. Um, if you see life as a pilgrimage, and I mean, did anybody have any comments on that from last week? I feel like we kind of covered that pretty thoroughly. I mean, I think we were all pretty much in agreement that life is somewhat of a pilgrimage, one shape or form. So we kind of just left off with that, and then we have um, what it means, what engaged means to you. Does anybody want to cover on that? Because I felt like we kind of were rushing a little bit towards the end, but does anybody have any thoughts on that? I mean, for me, I just put down like this term engaged means for me personally is that personal battle in the word. So, but what do you guys got?
I took more of like the dictionary definition look at it, I guess. I put down that engaged means to be fully immersed and attentive to something. So like you're giving everything you've got to focus on whatever it is you're engaged with. You're not like thinking, oh, this is what I gotta get at the grocery store later, or this is what I want to do after once I'm done with this. Those thoughts are completely gone. You're completely focused, single-minded on this one goal.
Yeah, I went a lot closer to what Jack did. I put down paying attention or occupied.
Yeah, I like what you guys are saying. I guess it's really clicking to me now, especially with what Jack has said and what Granny was backing things up with, is that, it's that engaged, that focus. Like you're not, distracted by anything. This is your goal. This is what my eyes are set on. Well, let's move on to that next question there. Would your wife or children and your friends describe you as an engaged man, or whom do you know who has modeled an engaged life? What does engagement look like in a person's life? I butchered that question there, but I think Kevin can probably answer that last one pretty well. Don't you, Kevin? What does an engagement look like in a person's life?
Yeah, Kev, what's it look like?
I have 2 words to say to that. Stressed and busy. That's what all I'm gonna say.
That doesn't sound too good then.
I think we could all describe you as an engaged man, so
We could.
Oh no.
Well,
man.
oh man. Well, I don't think any of you can attest to a wife or children, unless there's something you guys aren't telling me. But
You never know.
Granny?
Oh. I'm not allowed to say.
Oh no.
Sign an NDA.
How'd you know?
So I guess what is this question asking? And like, would your friends describe you as an engaged person? Really? I guess how would you answer this question? I mean, like it's one of those weird ones that I feel like we could probably just skip over, but it's one of those self-check questions that it's asking, I mean, like I get it. Me personally, I'm not a huge fan of self-check questions because they kind of just, I don't know. How can you answer that honestly from, you know what I mean? Like from how do your friends describe you? Like, how are you going to be able to answer that truthfully?
Yeah, I mean, you could try to look at them in a different way. You self-analyze yourself, and then if you share it with someone else, and they agree with it, then then you can realize that you're able to view yourself in a correct light. Instead of, I'm sure there's some people that if they wanted to answer that question of how would your friends describe you, and be like, the bestest friend in the whole world, just the greatest person alive. They worship the ground I walk on. And then their friends read it and they're like, yeah, no, he's the complete opposite of that. It shows that you're not that good at self-analyzing and you can't see your own faults for what they are. So, yeah, doing it just by yourself, just self-analyzing by yourself doesn't really help. But if you self-analyze and then share it with someone else, it could possibly show some actual help.
I like what you're saying. Like, it's almost like a two-part aspect. You know, you can't just leave it off with the self-check and not, you know, have that counteract there. Does anybody else have any comments on that? I mean, I'm pretty set on that question. I don't know how some of these will probably breeze right through it. The term domesticated, what does that mean to you?
I put down that domestic kind of just means trying to maintain that status quo. Like, you're not trying to strike out and do new things. You're not trying to push yourself to new heights. You're just trying to maintain that steady, even plateaued flow throughout life.
I once again took the more dictionary definition of that, and having animals at that point, I put docile, because that's kind of what the domesticated animals are, more docile than the wild ones.
Yeah.
Like Jack was saying, going with the flow, they don't really care. So.
Yeah, I mean, to back up what you said, like domesticated according to dictionary, tame or kept as a pet or on a farm, right? You can use that term if it's related to plants cultivated for food, naturalized. Then there's the last part. It also mentions fond of a home life or housework. So I guess that's probably where we want to hone in on, is that fact of, are you fond of home life and housework?
I mean, I enjoy it, but I'm not sure that would qualify it as being a bad thing, because I still do like going out and actually like doing my job and being out of the house, but it's not like I never want to be at home either.
Yeah, because like, I mean, they're leading into this next question. What does domesticated describe your life? How would you say your life is not domesticated? I mean, I think we're all domesticated to a certain point, right? I mean, according to that definition, like I would hope that we know how to take care of our take care of our home life, right? I mean, as far as a man's concerned, this word might seem more demasculating, if that's even a word. But it's just that, you know, I can't be domesticated. I'm a man. I do what I want. I'm wild, and I just, you know, you can't tame this. You know, and you can kind of go down the list. So I don't know if they're trying to get the negative meaning from this or a positive meaning from this, but or for us to just kind of analyze it and what it means to us personally. But I mean, if we're talking about a home life according to God's word, then I would have to say that it would be a good thing to try to be domesticated according to what God has for us in our life. You know, because as men, we tend to just think that we have to worry about the finances and taking care of our wife that way. We bring home the bacon and we call it good. And then as long as we're doing that, we can go and do whatever we want. You know, whether it's, you know, we go down that lane of selfishness, and I'm going to get that big screen TV. I'm going to go out and, from a worldly perspective, I'm going to go out and hang out with the guys at the bar or whatever it is. Or, it just, we tend to just think as long as we're taking care of that one need, everything else should just line up. But the reality is that as our role as husbands and as men, we're supposed to be providers, and not just providers of finances, but to be there for our spouse when they need us. Just looking at my life right now, like with Harrison just being born, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to make sure that Christy is getting the rest that she needs after, she got to hold him for 9 months. So now it's my turn, and so I'm going to help him out as much as I can. And even with the other kids, I just want to make sure that I'm pulling my fair weight. How can I make my take the burden off my wife? Harrison agrees. So I guess, like, I don't know. I don't know if it's a bad thing, good thing, but
If I may,
go ahead.
I think what you're saying is good. That I found the paragraph in the book that talks about this section, and it goes a completely different way from what you're talking about. Because the angle you're taking is more of the father being the head of the household, which is what the Bible talks about frequently, and it's a very important skill for us to have. But I'll just read this paragraph from the book, if you don't mind. It's not too long. Our church's typical method for dealing with men doesn't produce engaged men, or trained men, or settled men. Instead, we arm men with a few Bible verses and a weekly speech. Then we send them off to a life group at someone's home, where it's assumed they will connect by talking about that week's speech. What so many men get out of all this is that they have to do better and do more. And that message is coming from what someone else is telling them about God, not from their own relationship with Him. The training they're getting is for a domesticated life, not the adventure of personally walking with God. Is that the best we can do? Because it is not what men dream about or hope for, if they still dream and hope at all. So it seems like what the book is taken with the domesticated angle is men are being trained not to deep dive into their own Bible studies and their own walk with God. Instead, they're just being taught to be spoon-fed through life groups and just being just listening to sermons and not having to go out and do things on their own, of their own initiative, which would lead to them being, as Granny said with this dictionary definition, more docile when it comes to growing their walk with God.
It goes back to that first session that we had with the just becoming complacent and how dangerous that is.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that from that other angle as well. Jack was able to do his homework this past week. I didn't, so thank you for pairing us up with the book and what the book said. That's great. I'm a little far behind on that, but that kind of connects the dots for sure. So, when you were younger, what kind of life did you guys dream about? I think we can go around the table here and just share with our own personal experience as far as just like as a kid, like what were some things that just like, what did you want to be when you grow up? What did you dream about? Jack, why don't you start us off?
Sure. I'll be honest. I guess you could call them autobiographical memories are terrible. I can barely remember what happened to me a week ago. So I'm not 100% certain on what I wanted to be when I grew up, when I was a kid. But up until when I was around 12 is when I essentially made up my mind to become an engineer. It was your typical dreams of like I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a football. You know, all those things.
Yeah.
He wants to be a football.
You know,
Just the football.
I was not the smartest kid on the block for a while there. But it was those basic things were like, it wasn't being a celebrity where people see you and it's like paparazzi come out and they take pictures of you. It was more of the positions where you'd look at people like Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, famous people, like famous scientists like Thomas Edison. You don't like rush out to meet him and be like, oh, I want to take a selfie with you, stuff like that. It's just like, wow, he's pretty awesome. I wanted something like that when I was a kid. Some position that I could be so proud of that everyone knew. And then I wanted to be an engineer, and that was that. All that went down the drain.
Kevin, what do you got for us? What were your dreams? Tell us your dreams.
Well, once Jack was talking about not remembering all these different, aspirations of what you wanted to be, I thought about all the different ones that I wanted to when I was younger. I jumped all over the scale, like, chef, president of the United States, pastor, all this, like, literally all over the place. I think a couple of years ago I decided I wanted to still work with animals and really make a difference in that. And I think I still want to do it, but I think I still want to focus on just the making a difference. And I think about the verse that I've made my life verse, and it's Jude verse 22, and it's some having compassion, making a difference. And I think I think everything that I've thought about when I was a kid has led to wanting to make a difference in the people around me, and if I can only make a difference for one person in my life, then so proud of me for doing that. I think I think just making a difference is where I want to end up, kind of thing.
All right, Granny, what about you? What do you got for us?
Well, the only two things that I really remember that I wanted to be when I grew up was like my dad, like knowing how to do a little bit of everything, and slowly on my way to that, very slowly. And then be a construction worker, which is what I do now. So that kind of all worked out. God really blessed on that front. But those are kind of the only things that I can really ever remember wanting to do or be. And yeah, maybe farmer is one of them, and starting on that as well. So yeah.
Achieving all the childhood dreams.
Yep. Set the bar low.
Easier to hop over that way.
Exactly.
Amen. All right, Matt.
So what I can remember is, especially when I was really young, we always liked trash day. We liked when the trash truck came, so I always wanted to be a trash truck man. And once I started growing up, I realized that I didn't want to, but like that was the earliest I was wanted to be.
What was the tipping point? What made you decide not to be the garbage man anymore?
Trash truck. Well, actually, recently I heard someone talking about it. A former sanitation engineer, whatever they call him now. talking about it, and it's not a bad job. But anyways, um, uh, and at some point, I know I wanted to be, or what I said, an army man for a while. Just wanted to, shoot guns and run into battle and throw grenades and whatnot. And I think that was probably partly part of the reason for that would be Call of Duty. But anyways, so yeah, and then after that, like once I got into my high school years, I got a lot more involved in sports. I knew I wasn't going to make it pro in sports as a player, but I've always had a desire to be involved, and right now I'm coaching and I like it, so hoping that it can open up different avenues and I can maybe climb the ranks a little bit in advance. So,
Yeah. How about you there, boss?
Well, like I am with everything, I was all over the map as a kid. But one of the highlights that sticks out to my brain is, it's so random. But when we were kids, we used to watch Little House on the Prairie like it was going out of business. And there was this one episode, and Charles met up with some stranger out in the middle of the woods who had a wagon, and the guy had it loaded up with this fine furniture, and he was trying to sell it, and he was putting his name on all the furniture that he sold, and this guy ended up getting really sick, and he dies really suddenly, and Charles, and like he does almost 90% of all the episodes, is he just starts crying, and he is very convicted of, like what if the Lord took him home, very quickly, like this guy died, and what kind of an impact would he have had? Would anybody even know he existed? And so that was like traumatizing as a child. Watching this, because I'm like, what if nobody knew Tom Jackson existed? And that thought really stuck out in my head and kind of really dictated a lot of the things that I wanted to do to grow up. I wanted to make sure that I left an impact, and one way, shape, or form in this world. Like, I didn't just, for me now, it's more on the spiritual side of things. Like, I don't want to, I don't want God to take me home with me not achieving much for him. You know what I mean? Back then, when I was still young, for me, it was more on the worldly side of things. Like, I wanted to become famous. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be president. I wanted to fill in a huge role so that everyone knew who I was. And, it's changed for me now. And the biggest change is the fact that I don't want to do it to be, I don't want to be known for a man pleaser, but a God pleaser. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I want to make an impact in that way. But yeah, it's just like little things like that stick out in your mind. When one of the things that did come true for me is I did always want to be a firefighter like my father, and that's something that I do, and I still do, and I love it. It's something that I find enjoyment from, serving others in that way, and so that's pretty fun. And even with serving up at camp the way that we are, it's an honor, really. I never feel like I ever deserve to be in a position the way that we are. My wife and I serve currently, but I praise God for it because of all the blessings that come from that. So anyway,
I definitely had to look up which one was Charles from Little House on the Prairie because I did not remember who that was.
he's the one with the perm.
Yep.
The one with the
Also the
perm.
dad, but the one with the
Yeah.
perm.
The one with the perm. Haven't heard. My dad's favorite episode with Little House on the Prairie was the one where this lady like is about to die, and she's like, "Charles, I'm gonna die," and he just always quotes that part all the time. So, you know, fun things that we always remember with our parents.
Good
My favorite
times.
was the rat plague one.
Yes. Yeah. Also traumatizing as a child.
Very.
Yeah.
As most things should be.
They must have showed that video right before COVID hit. So
That's why COVID hit.
that's why COVID
You caught it from the episode.
hit.
No, you got not unless you if you eat the cornmeal, then you're fine. That's one thing I remember from that. I don't know why.
No,
So
the
that's
cornmeal
why
is
I
what
caught it.
that's how they all got it, was from the cornmeal.
What? I thought it was from
Yeah.
the flour and the cornmeal was safe.
No, they all got it from the cornmeal, and then it was in a shed that was under lock and key, and they opened it up, and it was just like filled with rats. And yeah. I just watched it with the kids not too long ago. That's the only reason why I know this. I don't have that good of a memory. Okay, we just
See.
watched it.
You gotta pass that traumatization down then, I guess.
That's it. Gotta start them young. Okay.
Oh no. There's what is one of the great accomplishments of our enemy? What I put down is that he's got a grasp of the world's temptations, and he expertly uses them daily to dissuade and discourage. Like all the things that we see online, billboards, ads, whatever it is, they're just everywhere, and it's things that we probably shouldn't be watching, probably shouldn't be seeing. Maybe they're not bad, but they're just there to lead us away from what we should really be doing, what we should really be focusing on. And it's so prevalent in everything we do nowadays. And it's tough sometimes to keep on the straight and narrow when that big old wide highway is right there open to stroll down.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've talked about with a lot of you guys before in the past, and a lot of times that I go to these churches and present God's word, is that you know, we we literally have endless temptations on the phone that's in our hand every day. Now, I know the phones get a bad rap because we just have them constantly, and it's what's before us. But, you know, what parents seem trying to say is that, I'm sorry, you just locked it up.
Wow.
Simba.
Simba. I just Simba'd the baby and he stopped crying.
Amazing.
Oh, I know.
Well, he
So-
certainly feels passionate about this topic, that's for sure.
He's very passionate. He's a passionate young guy. So I guess, like, to go off of what you were saying, Jack, is that we feel like just because of where we're at today and with all the technology that we have, that temptation is like 10 times worse than it used to be. And I kind of have to not really, like, I don't feel that way. I feel like it's just another avenue that Satan is using against us. But I mean, I was reading an article that D.L. Moody put out in a newspaper, and he was kind of going on a rant himself about newspapers and how newspapers were being, you know, that were full of junk and gossip and temptations, and they had all these magazines that were not, you know, wholesome. And so it's just a new platform that Satan is using. And so I don't really feel like any of that's changed, which is interesting. And, you know, Harrison has a lot to say about it, but
Clearly. He's making some good points.
He really is. He's a great guy.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to sit down and cry about it.
Ain't that a fact?
I guess, like, for me personally, what I feel is the enemy's greatest accomplishments is the fact that he doesn't just outright lie to us. It's these little tiny seeds that are planted. You know, it's these. Oh, does the Bible really say that? You know, you go back to Adam and Eve and what he did with Eve. Did God really say that? He's putting doubt. And so I feel like that is the biggest accomplishment of our enemy, is the fact that he can put doubt in our minds.
Yeah.
Because that doubt can, really do a lot of damage for us in our spiritual walk.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things is just distractions in general, and like you said, it may not even be something that's necessarily wrong, but there's so many things. I mean, with the technology, with the phones and stuff, it's so easy just to sit and scroll through social media and do stuff on your phone when you could be doing something, that actually matters and isn't necessarily wrong to be, looking at stuff that your friends are posting or whatever. Not necessarily, but it's distracting. Maybe you're spending too much time on that instead of doing things that you should be doing, like I said. And that's something that I've really been trying to focus on lately. And that's a struggle for me, is always sitting there and I'm like, what am I doing? I could be, reading something helpful right now, or reading the Bible, or, spending time in prayer, instead of sitting here on my phone and looking at useless things. So.
Playing Clash of Clans,
Yeah, that heathen game.
Yeah, we all have our struggles. No, I agree with you, Matt. Those are great points to make. Is distractions as well. I mean, there's numerous ways where he can attack us, as far as individually, because there's all that. So, but we can press forward with this and keep on going all night. But I know it's getting late. We had a late start tonight. One thing that I wanted to kind of start off with our sessions is talk about just how an individual from history was able to just like counter punch our culture, if I can use that word in that sense, and be able to correct the ship and head it into a right direction, which I'll give you just kind of a brief example tonight. It's a very famous account in history, and it's about a gentleman named Horatio Spafford. And I'm sure you guys have heard his testimony before. It might start sounding familiar as I go through this, but when he was a young man, he was a very successful businessman. He owned properties, and he was a lawyer. From what I remember, that might not be completely accurate, but I know that he was well off, and he was very good friends with D.L. Moody and Philip Bliss. Philip Bliss was a hymn writer, and D.L. Moody, you guys know him as a very famous evangelist who ended up settling back down in his hometown here in Northfield. But Horatio was in Chicago, and this was actually, we're at the turn of the century. It's that late 1800s, and Chicago was a boom town. He owned a lot of property in Chicago. That's how he made a lot of his money. And as a young family, he actually had a little boy I think he was 2, 3 years old, and he got really sick, and he ended up dying. And I can't imagine losing a child. I don't think I could ever really. Don't even really want to dwell on that thought because of how precious these lives are when they're growing up and how fast they grow in such a short amount of time. And I was just thinking about how old Tommy and Addie are and how much they know, and imagine losing that as a parent is just, I just can't comprehend it. But he had four other daughters, and right after he lost his son, that's when the Great Chicago Fire took place. And like I shared with you earlier, he owned all that property in Chicago. And so he lost all that. And so now he lost his son. He lost all his, he lost all those buildings. I'm sure financially, that was huge. They were just starting, during that time, turn of the century, they were just starting to do like fire insurance and stuff like that. So like it was at the beginning of that. So I'm sure it was just really crippling financially. And then he decided that his family needed a break and go on vacation in Europe. And during that time, and the reason why they chose Europe is because D.L. Moody was doing his evangelical campaign over there. And so he was just going to bring his family over there. They were just going to recalibrate, refresh. He still needed to finish things up with all the devastation that happened in Chicago. So he had to stay behind, but he sent his wife and his daughters ahead. And when they were crossing the ocean to go over to Europe, their ship collided with another ship, and it sunk. And most of the lives were saved, but unfortunately his daughters all died and drowned. And his wife made it over to Europe. I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I can't imagine as a mother, not only do you lose your children, all of them, now you have to tell your husband that your daughters didn't make it. And her telegram that she sent back to Horatio, it's in a museum somewhere, but all that it was typed on it was "saved alone." And again, it's just the emotion that comes with that. What do you do with that information? I just lost all his children, lost all his finances. We've been talking about being a husband and being a godly leader in your home and having all this devastation happen. Like I said, it's hard to imagine being in his shoes. But as he was crossing the ocean to go back and connect with his wife alone, right on the very spot where the ship sank, he started writing. And that's when he wrote the words to "It Is Well With My Soul." And for me, I feel like that is one of the largest counter punches that you could ever give a man who had no reason to turn back to God, not get angry at him, but to remember that he can have peace in God and comfort in God during the most hard and difficult time of his life.